absent some significant concession to the residents. To do so is simply bad business. And bad business practices like these would have led us to this critical juncture. Let's start making smart economic choices and not those driven by expediency only. When it comes to smart choices, this product fails. All of the recommendations of the AECOM report regarding viability has this project outperforming at every level. And we all know about economic instability, economic cycles. If you promise to outperform in order just to be viable, you're waiting for trouble to happen. Over 95% of retail stores fail in the first 5 years. 60% of restaurants fail in the first 5 years. We should focus more on long-term sustainable models rather than economic fads such as retail entertainment. We need to focus on features and attractions the harbor affords rather than restrict or diminish those uses. Certainly not install a drawbridge that marginalizes access. Councilman Horvath, you won by 12 votes. District 3 voted against Measure B. Mayor Aspel, 49% or more of the people in this city voted against you. You don't have a mandate. You don't even have a consensus. Let's try and build a consensus by compromising and working to involve the community, get Senator Cal on board to involve the community to make compromises and all get together, and we can do this. We can revitalize the harbor. Don't extend the exclusivity. Have Senator Cal focus on attractions unique to our area, something you don't get elsewhere. This means not restricting views of the harbor and the coastline, but emphasizing those views. You can have retail shopping experiences anywhere. You don't get a Polly's on the pier anywhere. You don't get a seaside lagoon anywhere. To paraphrase Will Rogers, stupidity got us into this, and now we're relying on stupidity to get us out. Thank you.
Very good. Anybody else?
Thank you. Russ Yasna, Redondo Beach. I know you all read the letters to the editor. I'm sure you all read the 3 papers to cover Redondo Beach, probably the letters to the editor. If you look, the last 5 or 6 weeks, no exaggeration, it's almost all against. 2 weeks ago, the Easy Reader had 5 letters against, none for. Beach Reporter had 6, I think, the same week. Only a couple of them were the same. The reason I mention that especially is at the Redondo Beach News, and most newspapers back in the day used to think, okay, if we got a letter, that meant 100 people were reading. It's not very scientific, and I don't know if it means anything now. But if you're reading it, you know most of the letters are against it. So I keep, as a newspaper guy, I really want both sides. And every week I keep getting the papers and I'm thinking, okay, this is the week Senator Cal is going to explain to us how we're wrong. How letters from like Jim and Nils and Wayne, they're wrong, that it's not going to cost $7 a square foot and it's not going to be like the 3rd Street Promenade. It means we're not going to get all these big box stores and things that we like are going to be able to stay there. And the letters are just never there. Now, I know today is the day that closes, and maybe they're not allowed to say anything, but there's just this real feeling of arrogance as they see that the city and the people of the city are obviously quite against this. So I guess the last thing I want to say is, if I was Mr. Bruning, I would start responding, and especially if we're wrong. If you can say, hey, this is why it's not going to cost this. This is why we're not going to have these big box stores. I'd love to see that. I'd love to read that. But I would warn Mr. Bruning that most of the people here, most of the people involved are the same people who beat the AES company, even though they outspent us 100 to 1. So if Mr. Bruning and Senator Cal has something to say how we're all wrong with our letters, I would love to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Wayne Craig. Just to, I guess, address the extension, I don't really see how an extension really is going to benefit the city. How many years have they already had to present the plan? And right now, all we're going to be doing is giving them an extension so they do more PR campaigns, like fake news reports in the New York Times. I don't see how that's going to benefit us. If they have a plan, present it, let's go through it and make it work. And as Councilmember Brand said, I think they've had more than enough time to do it. And it seems like none of these time periods are really going to conflict. So why don't we just go with the time period we have now, see what they come up with, and hopefully it'll work. Thanks.
Come on down.
Greg Deedy, Torrance. A few weeks ago, I was down and mentioned that CenterCal had promised a little cardboard mock-up. You know, I couldn't. I spent a little bit of time. I left it at home, fortunately for you. A little mock-up of what the south end of the hotel would look like. It takes about a half hour to tape it together, cardboard and some duct tape. If this extension, which I'm sure is going to go sliding through, could they possibly provide something like that to give people an idea of what this is going to look like in 3 dimensions? And that's 6,000 pages in the draft environmental impact report. There's one page that has these 16th-inch high numbers that refer to heights, and it sounds a little suspicious. And all these wonderful presentations that were given at the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center, it was just a real scam job to those that attended, because on the very last meeting that CenterCal presented what was really going down, and no one got to comment on it. They put roads through, they had an 800-foot-long hotel, they had these parking structures, and hey guys, that's what it is. There was no real input from the public. And that sounds a little slimy to me, and I don't know. Maybe others feel differently, but I felt we were scammed by them at those public hearings. It was just that cliche of the dog and pony show, and we'll get through that, and we'll really do what we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on down.
Jim Light, District 1. I think it's time to stick a fork in this and start over. We've been going through this for multiple years now. We've been promised models, 3D models, and every time we see this thing, it comes back worse. When for the very first presentation that they actually showed a plan view that we all drew on the tables and said what we liked and didn't like. Even that one, we said we didn't like the density. Every table came back, said cut the density, get rid of this parking structure. At the end of the process, the time we couldn't talk back, it came back even bigger. Then it goes into this black hole, and we come back with this 6,000-page report, and we find out if you'd add up all the combinations and permutations of the alternatives, there's well over 200 possible combinations of alternatives in this process. It's not closing, it's getting wider. And if you look, there was a letter from King Harbor Yacht Club that says one of the alternatives is move the boat ramp off the Joe Crab Shack site over to Mole A. Well, then there's not enough room on Mole A, so move the King Harbor Yacht Club over to Mole B. There's nothing in the EIR that even covers that. So this thing just keeps growing out and out and out. The impacts are rippling out, and we're not closing. And at this point, this is a project DEIR that you guys plan to grant entitlements on, and the public has no ability to address all the combinations and permutations. Plus the thing, it's a total violation of the Coastal Act, and it's a violation at this point of our own LCP. And that doesn't even get addressed. The DEIR is a joke. When you have 80% of the views blocked, and they say no impact, they take a view down a sliver that's open in the CenterCal path and said, see, it's an improvement. The thing's just BS. The thing's not closing. It's time to stop the ENA and really get control on this, listen to the public, because normally if this project was getting better, you'd see the public opposition going down. It's building. It's building. Every time we read more stuff out of what gets put out, the number of people jumping at us and saying, where can I donate, what can we do next, is growing. And we're not closing. We need to sit across the table and get real compromise. And this project has never compromised. Nothing. If you look at the hundreds of comments at the NOP, those were never addressed. And even you, Mayor Aspel, you said we got to do something about that parking structure. It grew. It grew in length. It grew in depth. We're paving over a third of Seaside Lagoon, including a private roadway now. It's going over Seaside Lagoon. There's nothing in the zoning that says you can put a private driveway there, or road there. And the more you peel back the onion, the worse it gets. They didn't even do water quality studies in the harbor. The water quality that they used to justify pushing our kids into the harbor was from south of the pier. So we're making decisions on data that we don't even have in front of us. And I'm surprised city staff even let that get out. I did a Public Records Act request on the water quality study. All they turned up was the stuff they do south of the pier. And yet we're saying we can push our kids into that. I just find the whole thing appalling. We're not closing on a project, we're diverging.
Thank you,
And
Jim.
it's time to stick a fork in this and call it done. Thanks.
The fundamental question for tonight, I agree with what the comments that we have heard, is what is it for us to gain as the city if we extend the exclusivity with CenterCal tonight? What's the hurry? Why not wait a few more months? Why do it tonight? Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, once again. Nils Nierenheim, Redondo Beach. You know, we're giving up, we have exclusivity. Key word here in this contract negotiations, right? In this hand, I have 4 comment sheets that are neutral for July of 2014. In this one, 5 or so. In this one, a whole over 30 comment sheets that are vehemently against this project as it was in July of 2014. Since then, it has only grown larger in size. In fact, there's a comment card here from Mr. Fellows that says he supports sensible building, and then he goes on to say that I am against building a movie theater as it will be competing against existing theaters that provide free parking. Once again, the parking structure keeps coming up now, doesn't it? You know, if we're going to continue on this path of exclusivity, we should get some sort of concessions, something that's going to get us, the citizens of Redondo and the South Bay, to trust them moving forward. Why does it seem like, for me, that we're continually paying for this as residents of Redondo, and we're not getting anything back? We're giving them exclusivity. We're not letting any other developer, other planner come in here and give us their ideas, and yet we're giving them more and more, a bigger project. We're giving them more money. We're giving them more time, and we're not even doing, as Jim said before, the proper prior planning for this project. So I ask you guys to vote no on this exclusivity furthering to the end of the year. Let's make them work for it. We have plenty of time until August. We can bring this up again in July or even August. So thank you very much. Have a good night.
We question the staff about the review of the facts. The $611,000 they are reimbursing us for.
They are funding all of those expenses.
So we're not giving them any money.
No.
Well, but
You know, we're not, this is something that CenterCal is paying us back. It's a reimbursement agreement is all it is. Have we written any checks to them? How much money has CenterCal put up so far?
The current reimbursement agreement is $2.2 million, and we have the ability to bill up to that full amount, and we expect we haven't billed that full amount yet, but we're very close to billing that full amount out, but we know that we will be pushing past that line, especially with the amendment to the CDM Smith contract.
Okay. All right, Bill.
Yeah, I want to make the motion to approve the 4th Amendment to the reimbursement agreement and to approve the 3rd Amendment to the contract with CDM.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the 4th and the 3rd.
And can I just, it's important to look at the ENA Section 3. So the deal, in essence, that is before you, and it's entirely up to you, is the reimbursement agreement does not go into effect unless the ENA is extended. So in essence, CenterCal has said they'll pay the additional $611,000 if their ENA is extended. And that's in provision 3. And so there's no point in having the reimbursement agreement because under its own terms, when you look through it, it doesn't go into effect unless the ENA is approved. The one sort of standalone thing that you could approve is the CDM Smith contract. However, if CenterCal's not reimbursing it, my suggestion would be to bring it back because you'd have to bring it back with a budget modification to allocate the $611,000. And so that's, just so everyone's clear on what you're voting for, in essence, the deal here is CenterCal gets the additional time from August to the end of December for the ENA. If they get that, then they're willing to pay the additional $611,000. You don't have to do that, and you're correct, Councilman Brand, that it was October of 2014, the last time it was extended to August of this year. But just so everyone's clear, the ENA and reimbursement agreement are effective. They're either neither of them or both of them. CDM Smith is standalone, but you really can't approve that tonight without the other two, because you'd have to identify the budget modification, which would take a 4/5 vote. So I just want that clear so that you understand, because I certainly understand the motion, but it's important that you look at it. It's Section 3 of the ENA, and it's consistent with what they've had before. Again, the trade-off being, city, you can't negotiate with anybody else for this site, but then they'll reimburse the city for those additional costs. So, and I'm not expressing a preference one way or the other. That's clearly for you. I just need you to fully understand that the motion in and of itself really can't go in, because the reimbursement agreement by its own terms wouldn't go in without the ENA, and CDM Smith, if it's not the reimbursement, the better motion would be to continue it to bring back a budget modification. If you don't want to do the ENA, bring back a budget modification with the CDM Smith contract.
Under the ENA, then we are paying $611,000.
Yeah, essentially that's it. And that's sort of the trade-off here is the, additional time from August to December for the $611,000. And there are policy arguments for either of those positions. And that's what you all have to face.
So the questions are, what are we getting out of this? We're getting them to reimburse us $611,000.
I think that's the essence of the deal. It gives them additional time so that they don't have the ENA run out before potentially you could finish, the EIR and everything else. So that's essentially the trade-off that your staff is recommending to you, is to give them from August to September so that you can get the $611,000 covered.
So if it runs out and we don't extend it, then they could have invested this money, which is, again, how much? $3 million?
So the reimbursement,
could
the reimbursement agreement to the city currently is at $2.2 million, but it's probably important to note that that's the money they've reimbursed the city and doesn't account for any of the costs that they've incurred, for any of the work that they've done in terms of all of the design work that they've done to date and their consultant costs, et cetera, et cetera. So, I don't know what their internal spending amount is, but I would venture to say it's probably equal to or greater than what the reimbursement is that they've given to the city at this point.
So the old gist of this is all that happens is that if we don't approve the extension, that they can invest all this money and all this time, and then we could, in August, say, never mind, you're out, and get somebody else. And they've already invested the money. Okay, well, that's fine.
But to be
beware
clear,
of the devil, so.
Well, to be clear, you don't have any obligation to approve the lease. You don't have, that's clear in all the ENA. But what is also clear is in exchange for them spending the money on this, you've obligated to exclusively negotiate with them after you selected them from, the previous council selected them from the choices before you. And we're required to use due diligence and specific time, your staff, our attorneys, in evaluating that whole process. And so that's essentially the deal that staff has brought to you. My job is, I just wanted to make certain you understand the consequences either way so that you can make the appropriate, you can vote your conscience on what the appropriate policy decision is.
And this doesn't mean there's any deal done. I mean, there's still so many complex negotiations. Again, there's no bulldozers or shovels in the dirt.
It's been very clear in all the documents that this does not bind the city, and you can't bind the city, and it's very important that you not have a deal done before you exercise your discretion under the EIR, and that's been clear throughout. But what you have and what previous councils have bound you to do is to exclusively negotiate with CenterCal after you pick them. Now, it's been extended a number of times. There were 3 phases, and I think the first phase was sometime in 2013 that got extended, or phase 2 got extended a couple of times, and then it went to, I want to say, August of 2015. And then, as Councilmember Brand mentioned, in October of 2014, the last time these documents were before you, it got extended to August of 2016. As Mr. Proud indicated, there's a little bit of disconnect that the CDM Smith contract gives them until November to complete their work, and yet the ENA ends in August. And so,
Okay.
again,
So there's a
I don't have
motion
a
and a
preference
second.
on this. This is just probably to accomplish what I hear you saying, Councilmember Brand. It might be better to, you know, ask to continue this to the next meeting and bring back the CDM Smith and the and a budget modification if that's your preference.
Well, are you saying, Mike, that the motion I made then would void the reimbursement agreement with them?
The reimbursement agreement. Let me
Well,
read.
we're under an exclusive negotiating agreement right now. till
Until August, correct.
Right. So if we
already
do,
spoke.
if we did nothing tonight,
Then you have the current reimbursement agreement, which has a cap, which says that it's clear that the city is responsible for any expenses beyond that cap.
we're almost at that, 2.2 million.
Correct. And so you'll have those additional caps. From what I hear from your staff is you really do need to amend the CDM Smith contract for them to complete the obligations. My concern is if you amend that contract without a funding source, then you're talking about a budget modification, and that would be more appropriate to do with the appropriate resolution.
So basically, we'd be spending, maybe spending $600,000 to not extend the exclusive negotiating agreement, because we may end up extending it and then getting reimbursed.
That's correct. You would have no obligation, we as the city would have no obligation to continue exclusively negotiating with CenterCal beyond the August date. They would have no obligation to reimburse the city beyond the current reimbursement agreement. And that's why I just wanted you to understand those two are linked together in terms of being effective so that you could make the appropriate decision, and that if you wanted to do CDM Smith without it, then I think it's technically appropriate to bring back a budget modification, which we could do at the next council meeting.
Right. Okay, well, I'll make that motion to continue the item and come back with the option of a budget modification for the city to pay for it, what's in excess already of our reimbursement agreement. And that at least gives us the option to do it if that's the direction we go. I mean, it's the way I feel right now is, yeah, we should maintain our exclusive negotiating agreement till August, and I just think CenterCal is going to, you know, be willing to talk to us to extend it beyond that if things unfold in certain ways. I just don't want to extend the exclusive
motion in
negotiating
this
agreement. Yeah, my
conversation
motion
somewhere?
is to continue this item and direct staff to come back with a budget modification so that we can enter into this CDM contract, and us pay for it, if we choose to do that.
There's still
No,
public comment?
sir, no. No more comment. It's closed. You've already spoke.
I didn't speak on this topic.
You haven't?
No.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Wait till we have the motions and how this, you can sit down, I'll call you back up. Okay, there's a motion, a second to, just tell me what the motion was that was so long.
It's to continue the matter until the next council meeting and return the matter with also, as another option, a resolution with a budget modification so that that way a potential outcome is just approving the CDM Smith contract and the city paying
And we
for
would
it.
pay $611,000,
Potentially.
if that's the vote in that night.
Right.
Okay. There's a motion. As you want to speak to it, go ahead.
All right, folks. My name is Martin Holmes, District 1. I have 2 points I wanted to make on this project. The first is that I do not believe it is economically viable The second is I think we need to start over with a comprehensive plan for the city that addresses both the AES site and the waterfront. CenterCal is not a charity. They need to make a return on their investment. The AECom report, which was done by the city, was for an investment of $300 million. CenterCal, on their website, on their Facebook page, has now said the investment is $400 million. That's a 33% increase. The economics of a 33% increase are pretty significant. You need to really start over and do a new financial analysis. At $300 million, the AECom report said that each square foot of space there needed $780 of sales. So 33% more than that. At $400 million, you now need $1,040 of sales per square foot. So let's put that in comparison. Can a 1,000 square foot business, relatively small, across the entire average, make $1 million a year? Can the 524,000 square foot development produce $545 million a year? That ratio is a ratio of 1,004. That same AECom report cites that the Grove is 600,000 square feet and produces $675 million in sales per year. That ratio is 1,125. So your ratio of 1,004 to 1,100, we're talking essentially very close to the same size as the Grove. We're talking about building a Grove on our waterfront. But realize at the Grove, you can drive in from all directions. Here, half of your access is ocean, and fish are very bad shoppers. Can the community spend enough at these businesses to provide $545 million of sales so that they can be successful enough so that CenterCal can receive the rent they need? If not, you're going to have 525,000 square feet of bad business instead of 220,000 square feet of bad business. If it does succeed, you have the Grove. We need to start over with a comprehensive plan that looks at the AES site and the waterfront. They are not independent. We need one city, one waterfront, and one plan. Thank you.
Okay.
Just so we're clear, the budget modification is going to take a 4/5 vote, and I won't be voting on spending $611,000 out of the general fund. And second, this is just, there's no agreement, final agreement in place for CenterCal. There isn't one. We're still working out the kinks. And I'm sorry you guys don't feel that you seem to think that things are set in stone, and they're not. And so this is just to align the EIR company and their deadlines with the exclusive negotiating agreement. They'll pay for it, and instead you want me to pay tax dollars of $611,000, which is unnecessary when we just have to extend the contract just 6 months, because there's nothing's going to happen between now and January. There's not, like you said, there's not going to be a shovel in the ground. This is all still under negotiation. We're still working things out, and this is not an acceptable use of money. So I would vehemently disagree with not extending this ENA. We should extend it. We should extend it, yeah.
Christian.
Okay, so the total excess amount we would owe is just 611 plus the CDM Smith, or is?
The 611,000, that is the increase in the reimbursement agreement, covers the CDM Smith contract amendment plus some additional costs for processing the project.
That would be our top end if we go with, okay. Do we even have money in carryover or year-end funds? Like, do we even know that money is there? Without hurting something else that we need the money for. I'm just asking hypothetically, speculatively.
We would take the funds out of fund balance. We do have funds available that are unallocated that would still enable us to meet our 1-month reserve. So is it feasible? Yes. Certainly not our recommendation.
Okay. So, and the whole point, can somebody explain to me why, when we negotiated the agreement with CDM, that we did not match it up with and sync the two together. So why is there a disconnect that is kind of causing this right now?
Well, I can't speak for the two parties at the time, but ultimately the CDM Smith and the reimbursement agreement were taken on separate occasions, and it's quite possible that there wasn't communication as to when those outside deadlines would be. Theoretically, from a perfect sequence perspective, you would complete the EIR process, you would complete CDM Smith's work effectively, and then we would have the sort of final 4 to 6 weeks to deliberate on the transaction documents after the council has made its decision. Ultimately, we wouldn't spend the next 4 to 6 weeks considering the transaction documents beyond CDM's work if the council didn't certify the EIR and didn't approve a project. So it's obviously, from a timing perspective, the alignment needs to be as is proposed now. It's funny, 2 years ago, we thought August was an outside date for us to even, to get through all of these things, not just EIR, but to get through all of the transaction and potentially, I believe at the time, get through Coastal Commission review. This ENA extension wouldn't even take us through that period. This would take us simply through the city council's ability to deliberate on the project, and then whatever requisite time would be needed after that in the event that we were to move forward with transactional documents. So this is frankly, this is less than a 5-month extension. It's fairly conservative, and it's meant to give our current partner in this process, who we've been working with now for several years, an opportunity to complete the deliberation. We are very close to the end here, one way or the other. This is giving us that time to execute, in fairness, that decision, and not be forced to rush through what will ultimately be, I imagine, several deliberations by the Harbor Commission and this city council.
Okay, so Nils said something before. He said, we're not letting anyone else come to the table on this. Is there anybody else out there that is vying for this project right now that we're aware of?
Well,
I'm just,
not
you
that
said it like it was fact, but is there anybody else out there?
Not that they're aware of, and by the very nature of the exclusive negotiating agreement, we would be precluded from speaking with anybody about that if there were someone who were interested.
Exactly.
So,
right. So, and the point is, we're going through a process. We went through a process. We narrowed it down to CenterCal. I was not here for that part of it. Neither was Laura. But I kind of feel like I hear what you're saying, Mr. Light. Stick a fork in it. But we should let the process finish. And this is not a finalized project by any means. The process isn't done. Heck, we haven't even approved an EIR yet. It still has to go through Harbor Commission. It still has to come to us. I'd like to finish it and then make a decision as to whether we're moving forward or not. So, did you make a motion, Laura?
No, but I can.
Oh,
I make a motion to approve the amendments as is stated on the staff report.
Second.
Bill?
Yeah, so what time is it, 11:30? This is like a really important issue, and I don't know why our agenda was packed so full, and here we are at 11:30 at night talking about something really important. This could have been done last week or next week, or the parking thing could have done last week or next. It just seems like this agenda was really loaded up, FYI. Anyway, I can't in good conscience, because I don't know that I want to extend the exclusive negotiating contract with agreement with CenterCal past August. And it would be disingenuous for me to just say, oh, okay, yeah, let's do it because we're going to save $600,000. Just because of that, because come August, I don't know that I want to extend it. I don't know that right now.
Vote no.
And if it comes and I don't want, and August rolls around and I realize, hey, I didn't want to extend this, and then boom, there we are. We've gone past the deadline, and it could be a really important 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is. So, yeah, I think we should keep our options open. I would feel good if we had a budget modification. We do have the money, and that if we decided to continue on with CenterCal, that we could then consider some sort of negotiation where they reimburse us for what the money is that we've spent. But I don't think we should be tying our hands extending it yet again without having more information. Because like I said, the project's changing. And I feel like we're, you know, they've been tied so closely together, you know, why, I don't know. Like I said, I just don't feel like extending it right now. I think we should wait.
That's your prerogative. Okay, so we go for, and if that passes, so. Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve 1, 2, and 3 on this thing. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Oh, boy, aye. Aye. It approved. I broke the tie. So it will be, we have extended it. So thanks for the applause.
A divided council.
It's okay. You're going to find that this doesn't do anything but keep it fair. And this thing is so far away, everybody.
Right around the corner.
So, okay, I think that was it. So we have city manager items.
Nothing this evening.
Let's hope there aren't. Mayor, council, I already gave mine. Bill?
Yeah, I got a request from a resident, Joe, down by where Pacific Avenue is. And it's true, it's kind of funny, I've been crossing there for a long time. There's no crosswalk. It's very awkward for the residents who are trying to go from the Village and Seascape over to, should I say, Captain Kidd's? But really, if there was a crosswalk from that area over to the sidewalk where the Crown Plaza is, some kind of signalization, because there isn't anything. It's very awkward. You guys probably don't know what I'm talking about, but if you go down there, you walk it, you'll figure it out real quick. Yeah, you'll go, oh, yeah. So they don't, somehow they need some way to cross.
We'll have our traffic engineer
I
check it out.
appreciate that, yeah. I mean, maybe there's nothing they can do, but have them look at it and see if you could put it in a crosswalk.
Okay, Christian.
Nothing.
Steve?
I'd like to, how can I ask to agendize something now?
Yes, and if two others join
Right,
you.
exactly. So I'd like to agendize campaign finance reform, start that discussion, since a lot of us, well, I didn't talk about it, but others have talked about it in their campaigns, and I think now we need to discuss it. Can I get a second on campaign finance reform?
And it would be good to have a comparison, a benchmark study of the other cities and what limits they have.
I've already started doing that.
It shouldn't be too hard to do.
I would say, I think it would probably be better to just have the initial discussion and then give direction to staff so that we can return with that. Because this is very much a policy-driven issue. So it will speed it up quicker.
Okay.
Okay.
Study in
2
an
more?
hour.
1 more?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll
Okay.
have discussion. I don't have a problem with that.
Good. And Laura?
Nothing.
Okay, we made it out on Tuesday. Good night, everyone.
Battery died in my computer, right?